Christ in the midst. The voice coming out from the midst of the four living creatures and the declaration of the famine is through Christ, and it is seen in the prophecy. And who is it that sits on the throne in the midst of the living creatures? Revelation chapter 4, verse 6. And before the throne there was a sea of glass like unto crystal, and in the midst of the throne and round about the throne were four beasts full of eyes before and behind. The throne is in the midst of the four living creatures. Revelation chapter 5, verse 6. And I beheld, and lo, in the midst of the throne and of the four beasts, and in the midst of the elders, stood a lamb, as it had been slain, having 7 horns and 7 eyes, which are the 7 spirits of God sent forth into all the earth. This is Christ standing in the midst of the four living creatures. And we see that the prophet Isaiah spoke about these things. Isaiah chapter 6, verse 1 through 8. In the year that King Uzziah died, I saw also the Lord sitting upon a throne, high and lifted up, and his train filled the temple. Above it stood the seraphims. Each one had 6 wings. With twain he covered his face, and with twain he covered his feet, and with twain he did fly. And one cried unto another, and said, Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. The whole earth is full of his glory. And the post of the door moved at the voice of him that cried, and the house was filled with smoke. Then said I, Woe is me, for I am undone, because I am a man of unclean lips, and I dwell in the midst of a people of unclean lips, for mine eyes have seen the King, the Lord of hosts. Then flew one of the seraphim unto me, having a live coal in his hand, which he had taken with the tongs from off the altar. And he laid it upon my mouth, and said, Lo, this hath touched thy lips, and thine iniquity is taken away, and thy sin purged. Also I heard the voice of the Lord, saying, Whom shall I send, and who will go for us? Then said I, Here am I, send me. So it is in these verses that we see that the voice of the Lord speaking from among the four living creatures, called seraphim, is speaking to the prophet. And those seraphim, those living creatures that are before the throne where the voice is coming out, are singing day and night, Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. And this is also seen in the book of Revelation. It is the same thing. Revelation chapter 4, verse 7 and 8. And the first beast was like a lion, and the second beast like a calf, and the third beast had the face as a man, and the fourth beast was like a flying eagle, and the 4 beasts which had each of them 6 wings about him, and they were full of eyes within, and they rest not day and night, saying, Holy, 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 Lord God Almighty, which was, and is to come. And these 4 living creatures with eyes round about of the lion, the calf, the man, and the eagle are also seen in the book of Ezekiel, where it has the face of a man, the face of an eagle, the face of an ox, and the face of a lion. Ezekiel chapter 1, verse 5 and verse 10. Also out of the midst thereof came the likeness of 4 living creatures, and this was their appearance. They had the likeness of a man. In verse 10, As for the likeness of their faces, they 4 had the face of a man, and the face of a lion on the right side, and they 4 had the face of an ox on the left side. They 4 also had the face of an eagle. Thus were their faces, and their wings were stretched upward. 2 wings of every one were joined one to another, and 2 covered their bodies. And in the midst of the 4 living creatures, he sees one like a man. Ezekiel chapter 1, verse 26. And above the firmament that was over their heads was the likeness of a throne, as the appearance of a sapphire stone. And upon the likeness of the throne was the likeness as the appearance of a man above upon it. There is a likeness of a man above upon it, sitting on the throne. This is the man that's sitting on the throne in the midst of the 4 living creatures with eyes round about, according to Ezekiel's testimony, that there's a man in the midst of the 4 living creatures sitting on a throne. Ezekiel chapter 2, verse 1, it says, And he said unto me, Son of man, stand upon thy feet, and I will speak unto thee. And this is Christ speaking to Ezekiel. Psalm chapter 105, verse 16 says, Moreover, he called for a famine upon the land. He brake the whole staff of bread. And we see that in the psalm, that the prophecy of the staff being broken of bread is decreed by God. And in Ezekiel, we see that it is Christ, as God, who decrees the staff of bread being broken. Prophet Ezekiel was told the voice from the same thing from the midst of the throne as a judgment. In Ezekiel chapter 4, verse 16 says, Moreover, he said unto me, Son of man, behold, I will break the staff of bread in Jerusalem, and they shall eat bread by weight, and with care, and they shall drink water by measure, and with astonishment. And in the end times, we see the same voice of Christ at the throne, decreeing the same likeness with the staff of bread. It comes from the voice in the midst of the four living creatures, from the throne, to the prophet, about what will occur in the end times famines. And you'll see this in the prophecy. In the book of Revelation, chapter 6, verse 5 and 6. And when he had opened the third seal, I heard the third beast say, Come and see. And I beheld, and lo, a black horse, and he that sat on him had a pair of balances in his hand. And now we see the midst of the four beasts. The third beast comes out and says, Come. And then a voice speaks and decrees about the famines of bread. It continues in verse 6. It says, And I heard a voice in the midst of the four beasts say, A measure of wheat for a penny, and 3 measures of barley for a penny. And see thou hurt not the oil and the wine. So we see here, this is Christ in the midst of the four living creatures declaring the judgment of the famine and the measure of bread in the end times. Just like the voice of the midst of the four living creatures of the times past, as Christ is the one sitting on the throne in the vision of Ezekiel and the things that were spoken of in the past, and in Isaiah, where you see that it is the Lord who is the one speaking to the prophet, the Lord Christ, before he was incarnated into the flesh. He does the same thing. He's in the likeness at the throne as a man in the midst of the four living creatures, decreeing things. And this is the prophecy of Christ in the midst.